All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the First Look Show. This week, sadly, but double digits, week 10. We're through 9 weeks. Now we're headed into week 10. Got my guy Degenerate75 here with me as always, coming off a pretty big week for himself. Degen, I'll bring you in right away, man. Awesome week 9 for you. Many of the members, great stuff going on over at SHIPIT Nation right now, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But how you doing, my friend? And yeah, week 10. We're moving through this thing quickly.
Doing great. Just enjoying my life as a tout now. I've always been anti-tout, but 2 weeks in a row here on the First Look Show, the very first thing that I say, I think I'm going to build around this stack. It was Jameis 2 weeks ago. It was Gino last week. They both got me there, so it makes me just love this First Look Show because it gets the juices flowing and has got me on the right place 2 weeks in a row to make this a very profitable NFL season.
Got my notes this week. I'm not checking notes to tell them they suck like you'll do, but I'm going to actually maybe take some notes here and remember some of this stuff because you were all over it last week. And I do want to call out just another thing. Like, this was actually interesting. Someone brought this up to me through DMs, but remember last week, I thought this was one of the better strategy tips we've had all season when you talked about like Burrow. And I know this is what they came to me with, by the way, is like, oh, Burrow crushed. You guys said like he scored 5 touchdowns. Like that's the exact point though of what you gave. Like if you built with Jacoby Myers in your Burrow stacks, like I did, you or Madison, and you put some other guys in, you were saying that if he did get there, at least build it so that it's because they came along. Don't just stack him and Chase and move on because it's very unlikely they're even going to do anything. By the way, Chase didn't have the best week himself, but just to note, Chase Brown had a good week. But yeah, I just want to kick that back to you because I thought that was kind of a key point you mentioned. But if you are going to go against it or go with that, however you want to phrase it, go with it then. Commit, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was the point. That's why I like that Rams and Seahawks game last week, because I knew if Gino was going to get there with Matthew Stafford having his full plethora of weapons, that they were going to be pushing that game, right? The yards in that game far exceeded the points. That should have been like a 34-27 type game. And the reason that there were so many yards is because the Rams were pushing it, which allowed Gino to go get that kind of 95% outcome when it came to points. And that's the point I was trying to make with the Raiders and the Bengals too, is that if the Bengals are going to have a big game and it's going to be Burrow, there's going to have to be some Raider probably pushing them. And it was Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, and I think there's a good trade-off too. So I love that part about the Geno stuff aside, just the other stuff aside, the Geno stuff you mentioned. Like some people were worried that when he doesn't have Metcalf, it could get worse. And that is certainly true. But again, we talk a lot about trade-offs. I had some conversation with people in the Discord today about NHL, and it's really top-heavy tonight, but there's a ton of casuals. Like it may actually be rake-free of how many bad lineups are going to be put into this thing tonight with no clue. You are trading a little bit off. The same thing was to be said there. Well, you're without Geno and things could get a little bit tricky and the offense could shut down a little bit. It also could be just that much more condensed. You know it. You get it with JSN, with Lockett, and then if you wanted to put Barner in there or something, so be it. But it was a way to get after it. And your point of them having all their weapons on the other side, besides Puka throwing punches at helmets like the worst move in football, it still went in pretty good. So let's say what's up to the chat before we get into a couple other things. Shout out to Michael Ortiz, always here, crushing, had a pretty good week. I think I had a couple screenshots in there last week. Sean, always putting in the work. Appreciate that. Kenny, my man. Richie Smalls. Shout out to LSU Nick. I know it was a rough night. Already pumped him up in Discord. One of the best DFS players I know that most people probably don't, but really keeps putting in the work, and I know he's going to get there. And like I said to him, when you have a bad beat or a bad run out in DFS, that's part of your story. Slaying the dragon when you do, because it will happen, just makes it that much better because of what you had to overcome and go through. I've had some bad runouts. It is election day. We're not going to hit the politics talk. You guys know that. And shout out, Sia, the GOAT, man. What's up? We got to connect again soon. See, I'm excited. I know football's busy, golf's busy, but we got to make it happen, man. Love everything that you're doing all the time with your content. Coach Sav, Philly Phantom will round it out. Any grand scheme overview or anything you want to comment on there, Degen? And then if not, grand scheme overview for this slate coming up.
Yeah, I mean, this slate's a lot different than the past few weeks. We're back down to a 7-3 split, only 10 games on the main slate, a bunch of ugly-ass offenses on this slate. So I think weeks like this, there's more there's more reason to dive deep, right? There's not as many obvious choices to play. And I think you're going to have to get slimy in a spot or two this week. You're not going to build a lineup where you love all 9 guys in it. So that's going to be my initial take.
Yeah, I think that's important to note too, right? We're coming off 12 and 13 game slates, and the morning afternoon thing kind of, now it's a 7-3. So I mean, maybe some early only stuff if you want to get to it, but we'll get there. Let's pop this thing up here real quick first. It's a cool story actually last week on what happened with the Lister League. I'll show it off here first just so you guys can see it. If you're not in it yet for this week, just go over to my X at ToeTagginTambo or at SHIPIT Nation. Follow us there. We appreciate it. Like, subscribe here on the YouTube channel, but that link will be there. It is 2,000 entries. We filled it last week nicely. Down to the wire again, but we got it filled. $5 5 max, and it is completely rake-free. The structure is the best in the business. $12.50 up top, $150 for 9th and 10th. Just a great balanced structure across the board. Best tournament you can get into, $10 min cash. Let's go to the winner from last week, and it's kind of funny. There is a bit of a story to it. I'll save it, but I see you up 6th place. One of those lineups. Maybe talk to people first about your week, and then we'll dissect K-Rish DFS here. But what did you win exactly, and how did it go? I know there was some positives. Always positive to win money, but you could have been here, could have been there. But overall, just a fantastic week for you.
Yeah, well, first of all, I had 70% Olave. And so right off the bat, you're already thinking, well, this week's cooked because, he gets the concussion early, and there goes 70% of your lineups. And then I also had about 50% London, who I guess, got hurt in the first quarter after catching the touchdown. Matter of fact, 2 of my big ones, the 2 big lineups I had, they both had London. So they had even bigger upside. But, I kind of just hit 4 or 5 nice guys on the early part of the slate. And then I had a Geno stack with JSN and Cooper Kupp run back. And all those guys were under 8% owned. And so when all those guys kind of went ham, I just went from winning like $600 to I look back and I'm winning 35,000, and I'm really not that far out from winning the Millionaire Maker. Who knows what happens if that bomb there to Kupp at the end instead of Demarcus Robinson, or if the Seahawks don't get stuffed on that 4th down, they go down and score again. So I ended up winning the $50 single entry. I got second, the $200 single entry, and just a bunch of there was another one that I finished way up there. Just a bunch of solid finishes. Sadly, if I had the right lineups in the right contest, I would have won the 3 max for 100,000. But you can't really do that. I'm pretty random with where I put my lineups, so it just kind of worked out how it worked out. And the best part is my 4th straight year winning a GPP. And I know this sounds weird, but I enjoy winning the GPPs as much as I enjoy winning the money, because winning GPPs is fucking hard.
It really is. I mean, that's what the people have to realize, right? We talked a little bit about it in the Discord earlier with speaking of LSU Nick, who's here, just, in general, you do need a little bit of luck for sure, but it's very rare that I said it like this. People pop in all the time. They throw in a lineup. You see it. I shouldn't say all the time, but you'll see it. Somebody throws in a lineup. They get lucky. Guess what? Then they think that was skill, and they go bomb away all that money, versus the skilled players get unlucky a lot, but it's because they have the chance to get lucky. And then when they do, that's why, like you said here, took halfway through the year, but my streak of taking down an NFL GPP continues another year. Let's enjoy continuing playing with the house money for the rest of the year. And it was like 35K plus all across the board. I don't even know if you have them all in there. I saw some other ones that maybe you couldn't feature with the 4 max limit on X, but do you set any goals for the year yourself? Like, I'm a big goal setter. I set out things for the year, but do you set, like, is that your main goal? Just try and win an NFL GPP, since that's hard enough in itself, or do you have certain goals for different sports?
Yeah, so it's funny. We have the big guy chat over at SHIPIT, guys that have been kind of following me all the way back to my DGen 75 days, and they've started calling me Discipline 75 because I actually only play about $50,000 a year in NFL. I budget about $3,000 a week, and so that comes, and I only play usually those first 17 weeks, so it comes out to almost exactly $50,000. And my goal is every year to try to be get a good ROI on my investment. 20% is always my goal. And so, that means I need to get about 60,000 back on my 50,000. That's been my goal just as a guy for the past 4 or 5 years that started to become a for-profit player. And I do that. I don't just go shoot all these, as my name may indicate, I just shoot off all these random lineups. I don't. I'm pretty disciplined, and I want to win and be a player that plays with an edge. And so now, I've already crossed that $50,000 threshold. So I'm already guaranteed a winning season this year, just based on my previous weeks and this week. So, I'm playing with the house's money for the rest of the year. I'm not going to change my process. I'm not going to change how much I buy in for. I'm going to keep playing the same contest. I'm going to keep following my process, and hopefully continue maybe to hit one more big week. I try to hit 2 big weeks a year.
Yeah, I love that. And the irony that the D in degenerate stands for discipline, but it is so important. And I always talk about this, but discipline greater than motivation. Like you can have all the motivation in the world, but if you can't get up and if you don't actually go do it, put in the work, my mantra, nobody cares, work harder. That's the thing, right? Win or lose, you got to get up the next day and get back at it. Other people the people you're up against are doing that. So I love that you broke it down that way. I appreciate you sharing. This is, speaking of sharing, the lineup of you're sharing the winning lineup, from the big guy last week. We already showed you it here. You can go join it completely rake free. Check that out. But K-Rish DFS, 231.52, Gino, JSN, the run back with Cup, some chalk pieces, right? Just Kamara, Chase Brown, Myers, Gesicki. You got the 2 in the Cincy side, the 1 on the Vegas side. You got Kamara chalk. Lockett finished out the JSN triple stack with Gino, and then the Cardinals D. Just an awesome lineup. Thoughts on this as it took down in a blowout, 231 to 214, and he did do some more damage with it as well, but I'll let you comment on it first.
Yeah, I mean, you can eat that chalk at running back. Kamara and Brown, this has been a big thing I've changed my mind on the last couple of years. I like chalk running backs. I don't care about their percentage. I will get different with my stacks. I will get different with the way I construct my lineup. But like good running backs are good running backs in the NFL, and they're usually there because they're going to get a lot of volume. They're going to be in a good matchup. They're going to have high usage, and I'll eat that chalk. So, I don't mind him eating that chalk at all. I love the Geno double stack with the Cup run back. And then, the Myers Gesicki correlation there from that game, he basically went and grabbed the proper 2 pieces from my second favorite game. And I think he also had that lineup for like $40,000 too, if I remember, because I was seeing him at the top of leaderboards.
Yeah, me too. He had the opposite 2v2 of what I landed on. So it's always fun when the members figure it out more than I can. And I love this stuff. This is great. $125 into over 44,000, including the ultimate prestige. Forget the second place for 40K. You won the big guy. $1,250. It's all the glory. You blew them out. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? But I actually had, instead of JSN and JSN and the Gesicki chalk it made sense because he already had differentiator spots in there with Lockett, JSN, Gino, and Cup. That whole stack was different. That's why you can get away with the chalk. But I played Barner and I played London as a piece of that Atlanta-Dallas game. I kind of wanted to get a piece there, and then I had that. Did not see this till after, so congrats. That's what it's all about. I always say the puzzle pieces, right? Talk about the mindset. The puzzle that we talk about is you don't know the puzzle till it flips over. After, I feel pretty stupid. I see it, and I'm like, damn, that made perfect sense, but things happen. Injuries happen. I'm in London, had a good start to that game. You never know. One of those touchdowns from JSN goes to Barner, and I'm never going to say, I should have done this, should have done that. There's always little things that you can look at, and we talked a little bit about it on the takedown breakdown, but congrats to K-Rish DFS. All right, quickly here, go to the site. If you guys want to get in over at SHIPIT Nation, all the stuff that we're talking about there, all the NFL content, main showdown, the college football. We're about to bring up the Stone and break it down, the best tool in all of DFS, and you can have it for NFL showdown and main, college football to make your life easier there. PGA, there's 3 more weeks left of PGA, including this week, the Worldwide Technology Championship. NBA, we've brought it into play. NHL with our matchup sheet. People are using that big NHL contest tonight. And then MMA, NASCAR, and baseball obviously just wrapped up. So check it out. $85 a month gets you everything, including Shiptimizer access for all the sports that we cover on the site. Less than most sites are charging just for NBA monthly. So let's dive in. You talked about it before. The funniest part here is Kenny. You can't say the receiver slate is hideous. Don't you know that DeAndre Hopkins is going to duplicate last night's performance perfectly this week at just $5,300? And so, of course, everyone has to play Mahomes with him as well. This could be great. Could be good for us. But DGen, you already gave your overview. I am doing a true first look as usual, but I love it because we got the Stone, so we can have the grades. We can see how much they pass. That was another thing, by the way, your call last week. Gino was like 75% or 79% pass. Like all they do is pass the ball. And yet Kenneth Walker still ran it a bunch and had his opportunities, but Gino still crushes it with his guys on just 20 team points for Seattle. Our point that we always bring up, that it's not about team points, it's about fantasy points. But I'll kick it to you on this one. Patriots, Bears, and then anything else you want to add before that.
Yeah, never forget JSN had 2 40-yard catches called back too. So that's another 10 points he lost right there.
Yeah.
All right. So we're starting with the Patriots and the Bears. I can't. Caleb Williams, like I want to believe, but like when he has those 3 receivers, I mean, really, even with Cole Kmet getting going now, he has 4 options he's throwing to. It's never clear. Basically, the only Bear I've been playing every week has been DeAndre Swift. I feel like he's a good way to get a piece of a slightly above average offense, but I just don't trust Caleb Williams right now. And even if I did, I would not trust him to stack because I don't know who he's going to throw to. Weirdly enough, if you made me pick, I would take Drake May and some of his cheap ass wide receivers here over Caleb Williams and some of his more namely wide receivers.
Yeah, I got a couple things on that note. Rio, Hebrew Cheetah, a bunch of us in the Discord, myself included, we'll make fun of a little bit the air yards conversation because obviously it's like, well, how do we know? But some other sites out there have been good and, with data and been able to piece together uncatchable air yards. Like, stop talking about it if it's not even a catchable ball. And two of the guys in the top 10, I'll probably make the tidbits this week, but two of the guys in the top 10, I think it was Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen, are both there. Like, everyone's, look at all, like Caleb's airing it out to them. None of the balls are catchable. So it doesn't actually matter. And those little things do add up. They mean something at that point.
Yeah, you can't catch it when it's 6 yards out of bounds.
Yes. So they're not actually getting what you think they are. The other thing I was going to ask you is just, I don't know, like, it's a pretty good matchup for Swift. I think people typically, if they can't find it, we'll have to see. But when they get to a value price, they just love what he's been doing. Lots of good opportunities, things like that. Feel comfortable there. $100 less on the other side is the guy that just scores TDs nonstop. What's your thoughts on Ramondre Stevens here? Anything at all, even as an underdog?
I think that I don't think the Bears are that good. I think this is going to be a super competitive game. And in competitive games, Ramondre Stevenson, when he doesn't fumble, is kind of a badass. Like, when the Patriots play well, it's usually when he's playing well. So I think, 20, 25 points is definitely in the range of outcomes for Ramondre Stevenson. And I have to assume with him being on the road against a perceived solid defense in the Bears, he's probably going to be less than 8% owned.
Yeah. So starting a new segment, not really, but randomly, called Checks Notes. First note, Pats plus 6.5. We'll see where that goes by the end of the week. But I think, like you said, definitely a chance they stay in this game more than people think. So I like that call out early on. I've got nothing else to add with that one. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to the Bills at the Colts. First thoughts here. The other big thing with this one, just to note quickly, is obviously Anthony Richardson hitting the bench for what they say is the foreseeable future, like the whole season, maybe. Joe Flacco's the guy. So interesting stuff. But Joe Flacco will show up when we get out of the shell and the skeleton and to tomorrow when we do our first initial stone update. But just it loads from the site, the team site. What's your thoughts on the Colts at home versus the Bills?
I mean, like, I want to believe. I love the dome game. I love that, this is one of the bigger totals on the slate, but Flacco didn't look good against the Vikings. I think the Vikings defense is probably top 5 in the NFL, but I just don't think the Colts are that good. Rather you have Flacco or Richardson in there. They're not that good. The Bills typically play good defense. They've had 2 bad games of pass defense all year, but I think that they're good enough to shut down the Colts. And then sadly, Josh Allen is like Patrick Mahomes. Like, who am I going to stack him with? Especially if Cooper plays now, Shakur, Cooper, Kincaid, there's just too many mouths to feed, and he doesn't spread it around enough, and they run the ball too damn much. If anything, I would probably be most interested in like a James Cook, even though Ray Davis seems to be kind of getting to an annoying amount of carries recently.
So I actually wonder, that's a great call. First of all, I mean, you didn't have your Josh Allen, Quentin Morris, Mac Hollins stacks. You didn't know that was going to be the thing. Come on. Amari Cooper was out. You gotta know how to stack these guys. And that's the ridiculousness, obviously, of stacking a guy like Josh Allen. Everyone will say just play him naked. That's fine. But then a bunch of other quarterbacks in that range get there too. And then the cheap quarterbacks just keep coming through because they're priced bad. But I do like the James Cook call only because I know Ray Davis was involved more. And but think about it. He had what do you have? A check down touchdown that he took for 63 yards. And that's incredible. And I know people with their best ball bags, and probably including yourself, other people took him. You could get him really late. That's awesome. That's good stuff. I'm just saying, you have to imagine outside of the best ball price, he's not the nice price of $6,900. He's $7K flat, but this is a really good matchup for them. They are favorited. They are, 26 points is nothing to look away at. So on my side of the notes, I'm writing a little James Cook. I just can't imagine at the end of the week people have any interest in him because of all the other factors, and we'll have to see. But just a little note that I thought of right away. As far as the Flacco side goes, I guess these guys hurt some feelings last week. I know that it was the Sunday Night Football game, which is included on FanDuel. We play Showdown for DraftKings, but really disappointing from a, Flacco, Downs, Pittman perspective. Everybody was playing those guys, and nobody really came through. Is there anything else you have to add on that? I know you mentioned Flacco not really making a huge difference there, but just if they are going to have to chuck in this, could you see any of those guys as a one-off or maybe a secondary stack with James Cook if I was interested?
I mean, Josh Downs is the one that I would consider. He seems to be the player who gets enhanced the most when Flacco plays. But $6,200 to me is kind of like, getting up to elite pricing for wide receivers. I mean, like, there's a lot of good receivers that you can be getting for $6,000. So I don't know that I'm jumping up and down to get Josh Downs in my lineup. It's 6,200.
Some good comments. Caleb and Pickens. No, you can add Xavier Worthy to that too, by the way, after last night of catching the balls out of bounds, counted for something. Bears blew it again. They could have had Daniels. Yeah. And Colts should learn their lesson after Trent flopped. Yeah. What about Taylor quick, and then we'll move on to the next game.
Man, the guy's gonna have a big week eventually. I just don't know when it's gonna come, and I don't want to pay $7,500 guessing when it's gonna happen.
Yeah, don't know. For me either early on, he's definitely not someone I'm thinking of. The Downs one, I actually agree with. Like, obviously he gets snaps, he can get targets, he's better with Flacco, et cetera, et cetera. You can make all these cases, but 6,200 is a bit up there. Again, if it's an ugly wide receiver slate though, maybe make a quick note of that and just see how the week shakes out, because that's something I'd be looking at, right? It's expensive. It definitely doesn't feel right, but sometimes that's the way it goes. Vikings at the Jags. Ugly games, man. Ugly games. But this one, the Vikings have almost a 26-point team total. So talk to me about this game. Aaron Jones, 6,700, but passing game probably looks a little bit more appetizing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would be more interested in the Jags side of this. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has become pretty good at fantasy as long as they're down 21 points and it's garbage time in the second half. You're going to look, he'll have 2 points at halftime, and then he'll somehow finish with 23. Brian Thomas being back, you could tell he wasn't 100%. If he gets Gabe Davis back this week and Brian Thomas is getting back to closer to 100%, he might be a guy that I consider stacking, just because I like cheap quarterbacks. They don't have to do a lot to pay off that price tag, and you have some lovely run backs with the Vikings, with Jordan Addison and, of course, Justin Jefferson, or even Aaron Jones, right? So this sadly, this is the kind of week it is that this is one of the early games I'm considering for my stacks.
Yeah, I was just going to say to you, I certainly could see a sneaky game thing hopping in here. And I'll ask you this too, because this is why I love the Stone. I see the pace is bad, horrible, actually, on both sides. But I think, again, we pointed this out last week, probably have new viewers this week, people watched it on playback, finding it, etc. Remember, though, you also have two really bad pass defenses, two very mediocre at best quarterbacks. Yes, they've had better games than others certain weeks, etc., etc. I get it. I'm just saying in general. But don't you see a spot here where that could almost be what changes that pace to the opposite, because they both get it going through the air and all of a sudden big catch here, splash play there, a little bit of a back and forth of the mediocrity, and next thing you know, you got yourself a pretty good game. Is that kind of how you see it happening?
I mean, that Rams-Seahawks game had horrific pace. And then all of a sudden, right before half, Geno gets a couple big plays, and then that game just kind of takes off offensively, right? So, like, you all it takes is a big play or two, even with poorly paced teams, and the pace of a game can completely take off and go in a direction that you're not expecting. So, yeah, and it's correlated too, right? Justin Jefferson catches a 60-yard touchdown, and then all of a sudden, Brian Thomas catches a 60-yard touchdown. This game could be off to the races in the second quarter.
What is the biggest total on the slate right now? Is it the Falcons Saints, or what do we think?
I don't even. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch right around that. I think the 49ers Bucks at 48 is going to be the biggest.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a quick glance. I tell everybody, I'm always doing it first. So this says 47.5 right now on my book. 49ers Tampa Bay is 50.5. So we'll get there. Don't worry. And then, yeah, I mean, it's not looking good. So this may get a little bit of steam or get people there a little bit, but I think it's the other part. That's what I was going to bring up, is what you nailed it with that Rams-Seahawks game, the pace thing there and all of that. Again, what did it finish? 23-20?
Like, they cut that touchdown in overtime, so I think it was 26-20.
26-20. Yeah, 26-20. And so there's the whole point again. It didn't matter about the points both sides put up. It's the fantasy points they put up, like I keep harping on, and that's the same thing you could see here in this game. So I like that call. I think there's going to be some plays within this one. We'll see if people get there by the end of the week, but I think it's definitely something to keep in mind. Let's talk about this next one. We just watched the Chiefs play again, another win last night, but talked about it already. DeAndre Hopkins, 5,300. Mahomes, only 6,600 for a main slate. I think, is that the lowest this year so far?
I've never seen him.
68 was where we were at last time, I think. So he's dropped to 66 now. On the other side, Bo Nix got a rude awakening. We talked about that last week. Not many people wanted to hear it. I know Mayo wasn't feeling it. Aaron Rasmus on Sunday show wasn't feeling it in the chat. Like I said, just the Ravens, this is what they do. They lose that game to the Browns. They come home and beat up on somebody who everyone thinks is good for a minute, and that's exactly what they did. We'll talk more about them on Thursday for the Thursday Night Football slate, because it's another AFC North battle, them at home versus Burrow and co. But let's talk about this one. Broncos at the Chiefs, a division game in itself.
Yeah, I think Mahomes, Hopkins, Kelsey double stacks going to be pretty popular. It's like the most affordable double stack you've ever seen with Mahomes. He really does seem to be, if you go off last night's game, he really does seem to be concentrating his usage to those two guys. So to me, the natural play I'm going to want to do is come in and grab Kareem Hunt, hope he gets 100 yards and a touchdown or two, and he's the one that controls this game. And not only am I probably going to get him a discounted ownership because people will be playing Mahomes, but he'll also be counterfeiting that Mahomes pass stack. So that's how I like to usually play games like this.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. Don't really care as much about matchup as, like you said, 9-point favorite at home. Hoop did a great job, I think, last night breaking it down, talking about, he's been talking about the Detroit stuff all season because he's a Lions homer, but he really did relay it to another team, and it made perfect sense. It's like that was kind of what was happening last night, and the reason Tampa Bay could stay in that game is because both teams just, let's play an ugly game. And it wasn't just the weather, I don't think. It's more of what we're seeing in the NFL now. The other coaches that know, hey, my job's on the line. I got to protect this thing. Let's just keep this thing as close as we can so maybe we have a chance. And then, of course, Todd Bowles blows it completely by not going for 2 at the end to at least give himself that shot. But they get what they get. That's the karma, I guess, for the turnaround. But 9-point favorites here, I'm inclined to think that too. I know it will be said all week is they got to get there before the blowout happens. They got to get there somehow. It would be through Mahomes, be through Hopkins, be through Kelsey. But I like your call there with Kareem Hunt. I think it's just fine. By the way, Derrick Henry, I know he's a different back than Kareem Hunt, but pretty good week for himself against these Broncos last week, regardless of the current scorecard for their report card, I should say, for their rush D. Anything on that Broncos side at all that stands out? I know Cortland Sutton, the garbage time last week really helped him, but he was already fine. I think he was doing great, and that just added on. What do you expect? If they're down, they're going to throw him the ball.
Yeah, no, this is. I'm not a big fan of playing guys from teams that have 16-point totals, especially when Bo Nix is the one that has to throw him the ball, and this Chiefs defense is pretty legit.
Just made me think of that then. I mean, that's the other thing. You could also just get away from that trio and pair up a combo and do a little Kareem Hunt, Chiefs D. Not that you have to, just saying that'd be another way to get after it and hope it leans in that direction. The Falcons of the Saints, I thought would have been bigger, but let me just go see it here. It's actually less than that Jacksonville, Minnesota game, which is somewhat interesting, but I guess still it's Kirk Cousins, it's the Saints. We can see what's going to happen here, but let's talk about this one because maybe this could be sneaky good. But what's your thoughts on this one?
I mean, this feels like one of those games that's going to be popular. It's going to be in the dome. You've got decently concentrated offenses. I haven't heard what's up with Drake London. I imagine he would be back, right? And if he is, I think, he's a pretty good play. On the Saints side, Kamara getting over 8,000. Oh, that's a pretty big number. Olave's obviously going to be out. So I think that the Saints wide receivers are almost useless at this point. Trying to find one of these cheap guys that's going to fill in and do it. I mean, maybe Cedric Wilson, but I'll probably stick away from that. If anything, I'll be grabbing a Falcon or two and probably not stacking this game.
Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen here because, I mean, this is 8,100 for Kamara. He came through again last week. There's a ton of good tidbits and stats out on him for all the catches that he's been getting, and now you take out another guy. I can't imagine. Look, who was it there last week? Somebody who cleared the concussion protocol in like record time. Somebody.
Wait, was it Tracy?
Yeah, they go, yeah, Tracy Jr. That's who it was. And everyone's like, how the hell did he clear that quickly and get back into this thing? I don't know if that's going to be the case. Olave just got absolutely crushed. Unfortunate. I saw some insane takes. That's why sometimes you got to stay off X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it on Sundays. Like, oh, he's so he's such an exciting player, but he can never stay. Like, how does he stay healthy? He got crammed. Like, what did he do wrong? He plays football. That's what happened. And then obviously some funny takes. Kind of funny, I guess, from like Michael Thomas and going in, Mike Thomas and people. I think it was his brother or something too, talking to Derek Carr about how he just throws up hospital balls and crushes his own teammates. But yeah, hip pointer on Drake London on the other side. I guess where I was going with it off the top was if Kamara stays popular, what about just going to Bijan on the other side, who looks like the real deal? I mean, yes, Algier took another one from him last week, but this season has clearly not been as bad as what we saw in previous seasons where it was like, oh my God, he's getting robbed every single time. Just please use him. He looks real good, man. At 7,700, not a bad price. And on the opposite side of Kamara in a pretty good matchup himself here.
Yeah, a lot of times whenever I'm building my lineups, I'll put a rule in that says the lineup must contain either Bijan or London because it seems like one of those two guys are destined to go off every week. They're usually priced very appropriately. I see Bijan got a little bit of a bump, but I'm usually pretty comfortable paying low 7,000s for Bijan, and I'm always comfortable paying in the 6,000s for London. So I love having one of those two guys in there because the Falcons really do seem to deliver on offense.
Yeah, Mooney. I mean, London should be back anyway, so I'll have to see. I mean, hit pointer, I'm expecting him to be good, but Mooney, McLeod, Pitts, these guys all still seem to get a little bit of action. So I think, if I was doing anything here, I would be more inclined on the Falcons side. Maybe that is the popular side, and that's fine. I know that the Saints will be without certain guys, so you could say, oh, it tightens up a little bit there, all of that. But still, I think there's other ways that you could build within this game. So I'll wait and see as we get closer to the weekend, but certainly interesting to talk about right now. Good breakdown there. Let's go to the big total, the one that we talked about. So this is the mostly swayed, by the way, because it's a 6-point road favorite in the 49ers against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers, I would say, a bit of a letdown after last night. Certainly had their opportunity. Great game. Played a great game until it was too late. But Buccaneers at home here against the 49ers. First thoughts. Also, what's the no, I don't think he's back, right? Christian McCaffrey. There was
I heard they were aiming for a week 10 bounce back. It's week 10, isn't it?
Yeah. But are they actually going to do it? Is what the latest I was looking for.
I bet he's back with limited snaps. I think we'll see him this week. We'll see. Maybe somebody in the chat knows. But last I heard, he was aiming for week 10.
Yeah, it's all like speculation articles still, but that is what they said last week. And then there was like a follow-up. I remember seeing, that's why I brought it up like that, where it was like, oh, they're going to try and see and now, but this is, he can come back this week. So I don't know. We'll wait on that news. But for now, let's just go with, everything else we know here. 49ers at the Buccaneers. Thoughts on this one?
I think whether McCaffrey plays or not, I think Brock Purdy's probably just feels like the best stackable quarterback on this slate right now. With Ayuk being out, and Jennings, I don't know if Juwan Jennings is going to be back this week, but you're going to have a concentrated passing tree there for Purdy. If it's Kittle, if you have like Kittle to choose from, and you have Debo and maybe Ricky Pearsall or something, like that's something I want to get in on because that's not those expensive of a stacks. You're getting a good price total, and I think the Bucs have really good run back options with like K-Dot and stuff like that.
Yeah, the latest. So this was 22 hours ago. And there's, for some reason, a Brian Harmon video in here talking about Lucas Glover. I have no clue why. This is football, but the San Francisco 49ers are gearing up to boost their offense with running back CMC, wide receiver Juwan Jennings, and kicker Moody back at returning to practice, coming off a bye week, holding a bonus session today to prepare for a week 10 matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that'll be an interesting one. Definitely.
That kicker loves being mentioned in that article with those other two studs.
Yeah, that's correct. He was a stud in his own right to start the season, and then he had jury duty or something, and still ended up playing all that. But yeah, this is where they did. So Tim's point here, it wasn't like contradicting. It's just like they made the excitement about week 10, and then it was like he'll be back at practice in week 10. So we'll see. Like that's what they do, right? That's fine. It's that's how Shanahan and his squad like to do it. And that's okay. But I do like that call out the Purdy side of things. Anything more on the Bucs side with the, anything you saw out of these guys last night, just from these backups? I mean, it did not look good getting the ball to Shepard, Palmer, Miller, our boy, Raheem the Dream, Jarrett. Like these guys just were not getting into the mix as much as you might think. Miller did catch that touchdown late, but he dropped 2 balls that were important earlier before that. So it was just sort of a product of how the game ended. But anything else on that side that you want to talk about?
I mean, I think the one wide receiver I would consider from the Bucs would be Jalen McMillan, but that's if he's even going to be back. He was inactive last night, so he would have to be back. And I think Cade Otton is literally a top 4 tight end right now in DFS. So even at 5,500, I think you got to consider him because Baker throws the ball to him all the time.
Would you consider, with that said, I was just going to ask you about this actually, because you already mentioned Kittle. These guys are still priced too low, I think, for what they are, especially if there's certain injuries. Now it depends on the Kittle one, because of if all those guys come back, it makes it a little bit trickier. But just on the Bucs side, 5,500, even if McMillan comes back, he's still a wide receiver 1 or 2, depending on how the game plays out. Would you consider playing those two together in the stack?
Yeah, if you're talking double tight ends, I hardly ever double tight end stack. Especially 2 pay up options. And to me, when you get over $5,000 at tight end, that's a premium. And the way I build my lineups, there's just no way I could afford 2 $5K plus tight ends. So I wouldn't be double stacking them. No.
I might if it's in the game. The only thing I would say about that is that the difference is so you got away with it again last week, no problem, because Gesicki was basically a wide receiver with no Higgins, and he was only 3,100. He was basically the stone minimum minus you can play $2,500 tight ends, but typically 3K and above is what we're thinking. At 3,100, that made a little more sense. I guess it's close because I think it's more fair than it is good. It's not really what I want to do. I'm with you on that. It's just if you were doing it, at least I would understand it being within a game stack in this game as a way to get different, but not something I'm stretching to do. I certainly think Purdy with some receiving options and Otton on the other side, or when you're not playing Ott and you go to Kittle and hopefully McMillan back. Maybe him being back is what just changes this offense a little bit better for him and the other guys. So we'll have to wait and see. But certainly a game that people will be talking about. We'll wait and see more news on that as the week goes on. Let's move on. Go to Steelers at the Commanders. No, what's the total here? 46-ish for this one. So yeah, give me your thoughts on this game, because this is Jaden Daniels always an option here, but yeah, I don't know how this one plays out. I'm curious to get your thoughts.
I mean, the Steelers have a really good defense, but I also think Jaden Daniels is almost defensive proof. Like, I think he is going to get you 20 points minimum against anybody just because of how fucking good he is. But I still just find him almost impossible to stack, right? I mean, you can play him with Terry McLaurin, and that's like basically it. Like that, and that you're spending a lot of money on that combo, and you basically are relying on either a 100-yard bonus with 10 catches or a touchdown or two for McLaurin, and I don't know that you want to count on that every week. On the flip side, I don't know how much the Steelers would really push this game. George Pickens would be the obvious run back at 6,800. You're spending a lot of money on that on a game that I think could be kind of a slog, with both these defenses being better than people think they are. So at some point, I just got to ask myself, do I want to spend that much money on my primary stacks? And I don't know that I want to.
I don't think I want to either. I think actually, just first thoughts early, is the Pickens one-off. There's no such thing as due. It's every week is different. It's all that. But I mean, just if the guy literally has had so many touchdowns called back, and they're getting the ball to him, and they can do that. So I guess it's a tough wide receiver slate. If I landed at 6,800 and played him, I think I'm fine with it. It's not something I'm stretching to do, but it's like I said, just so hard to stack up the Jaden Daniels stuff. I played him naked last week, and it did not work out because I had just other pieces, the Olave injury, things like that. But just if you want to play him in a higher stakes, smaller field, I think you can always count on him to do something for 7,100. I think last week was probably a floor outcome at around 19 points. But like you said, too, with McLaurin, even to say, well, it's easy to stack him up, McLaurin and or Ertz. Okay, but is he getting 2 touchdowns again? And by the way, he got 2 touchdowns and still wasn't even near any of the winning lineups, anything you needed to be optimal, anything like that whatsoever. So it's just one of those things. It's really tough to make it happen. So I'll think about Pickens, but not too much for me within that game. Chargers at home versus the Titans with a lowest I've seen in a while, at least 15-point team total. So Chargers at home versus the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget the Chargers. I mean, Herbert, have you seen his passing stats the last 3 weeks? I mean, he's averaging almost 300 yards a game passing through the air. So the whole narrative that the Chargers are just running the shit out of the ball isn't necessarily true. They actually have a pretty functional offense right now, and the Titans do not. So if anything, I feel like people may be going a little overboard with the Herbert thing, and it may be a good time to jump back on J.K. Dobbins. But at the same time, Ladd McConkey with that Best Buy pricing at 5,900 also looks pretty nice. So that's going to be a tough one. And then Justin Herbert at 5,200. I mean, if he's going to pass for 2 touchdowns and 300 yards, he's going to deliver on that $5,200 price tag.
Yeah, I mean, Quentin Johnson is the LG TV price. Ladd McConkey, the Sony, like 5,900, 4,900. They got the Best Buy specials out in full-fledged. And I mean, of course, Herbert's looking a lot better. You have an amazing wide receiver core like Ladd McConkey, Joshua Palmer, and Quentin Johnston. That is what studs are made of. So I guess if you wanted to go to something like this, you could do so. It's, tricky here, this game. Like the Titans side, regardless of who starts at quarterback, it's always just so cheap. And then there's super cheap pieces with it. It seems like Westbrook-Akine gets in the box every single week. He's like Ramondre Stevenson at wide receiver for less than 4K. But it's like, then what do you do with that? Maybe a Dobbins, Westbrook-Akine mini stack. And look, 15 points doesn't really matter. If he gets you, 5 for 80 and a touchdown, that's still solid. So anything else you could possibly make of this Titan side, or you just want to move on? Yeah,
this is a game. These are the kind of games I usually just mark off, so we can move on.
All right, let's do that. Let's go to the Jets at the Cardinals. I don't know. You can usually speak a few words on Kyler Murray, so maybe start there and then take us through this one.
Isn't Call of Duty out by now, and he's still playing great? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, it did come out. It was October 26th, I think was the release date. So he's still in the mix here, and 6,300, which is a little bit, tough. It's crazy to say. I don't know if that's too expensive or too cheap. It's hard to tell with the way his games go, but I guess you could say it's fair. And then Connor still getting a ton of work. You can start to look at some of these stacks. McBride, by the way, right in the middle of that, or in the same range of that price. I think he's between, because it was 5,800 and 55. Yeah, 58 and 55 for Otten, McBride right in the middle. So thoughts on the Cardinals side, and then take us through this game with the Jets on the other side.
I mean, Trey McBride does seem to be coming to life. If I were going to play a Kyler stack, I would probably want to get him in there with Trey McBride. I just have been shocked how inefficient Marvin Harrison Jr. has been. And to pay $6,400 for that inefficiency is just really hard. I think I'd rather just pay up for Trey McBride. And then running it back with the Jets, Breece Hall. He's going to have a big game. He kind of gets lost every now and then, but like he would be the obvious run back to me if I were doing that. Garrett Wilson had that big game with a crazy catch, but I'm telling you, there's just enough people out there, with Devontae and Conklin and Mike Williams, just that I don't think you're going to consistently get those 25-point outcomes from Garrett Wilson that you kind of need to win GPPs. So I'm a little cold on the Jets, except for Breece Hall.
Yeah, and the tricky part is how expensive everything is now. Like, even if you wanted to say Rodgers and whatever, like I know people say he can't do it, but there's multiple weeks where he's been close. Last week he did his 3 touchdowns, by the way, which I was told it was impossible, but it's actually 303 that is impossible. So I'm waiting for him to hit that still, but we'll see. But either way, 5,700, even if you liked that and you liked the matchup and you thought this is going to be a back and forth inside in Arizona in the Dome, all this other stuff, it's really tough because then the receivers, you got to pick between those two, Wilson and Adams, and then you got to pay 72 or 7K, and it's just, makes it a little bit trickier. I like the Kyler side if you're doing it and then picking your guy with Breece Hall. So I thought you broke that one down exactly how I would see it too. Breece Hall, 7,600. Don't know if he'll pick up steam again like he usually does, probably, because people just know it by now and they love it. He really does get all the work, but I mean, gets the targets, he gets the rushes, he gets all that stuff. But yeah, I've got interest there for sure. And I think that's how I would look at it, but I'd be fine also if you just wanted to play Breece Hall and move on. Did you have any quick James Conner thoughts? I mean, he's been getting into the mix too, getting targets, getting that, but they were running a bunch of other running backs last week as well.
I never played James Conner, and then every week I'm like, why don't I play James Conner? I will tell you, they really do spread it around. I think, did you see how many people had rushing attempts last week for him?
Edson, DeMercado, Murray, Conner, they all were getting it for sure.
I think even McBride got a carry. It was crazy. Yeah. So yeah, that's the only thing that concerns me is I don't like to pay $6,500 for a running back that only gets 60% of the action out of the backfield.
I like it. All right. Do you want to pay do you want to pay $8,300 for a running back that scores multiple touchdowns and jumps backwards over guys on the field? Because the next game up is the final game of the slate. It is the Eagles at the Cowboys. Always a fun one, a little quote unquote battle. I don't know if the Cowboys count for a battle with anybody anymore, but Barkley, 8,300. The Cowboys signed Jonathan Mingo today for the same price the Chiefs got DeAndre Hopkins for. So very interesting stuff.
No, they gave up a 4th round pick. They gave up even more.
Or yeah, I think it was more because didn't Hopkins actually equal to a 5th, I think?
Yeah, exactly. A conditional 5th too. I think it was based on production.
It may be a 6th or something. It might go to a 4th if he makes the Super Bowl and plays X amount of snaps or something. But here or there, Eagles at the Cowboys to round out the slate. What do we got?
I mean, if AJ Brown's out, I honestly don't mind a little sneaky Jalen Hurts stack here, just with either Devontae or I don't know if Dallas Goedert's going to be back yet, but just something like that to maybe get away from Saquon, because Jalen Hurts has been playing well. The Cowboys defense is garbage, and I'll tell you this about the Eagles: they kind of just keep going. They don't really, even when they're up 21, they keep the offense going. So I don't mind a little skinny Jalen Hurts stack here. Although I will tell you, I don't love any of the Cowboy runbacks. Maybe Dowdle if Zeke's still suspended or whatever, or he's being a little whiny bitch. But I would like a runback from the Cowboys. And then I'm not sure what Cooper Rush's price is, but if he's under 5,000, I think you always got to consider that at home.
Who's got the Cooper Rush price in the chat? Let us know that one, because I mean that's at least something to talk about. The Cowboys is going to be the Eagles is going to be something to talk about. There's even the first article that pops up about Dallas Goedert is he missed his 3rd game in a row, blah, 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 all this other stuff. So we won't know on that right away anyway. So it's got to be something we could keep an eye on. But like you said, if you went with Hurts, Devontae with AJ out or something like that, I think that could be a way to go. But I guess that's how I would kick it back to you. I would want to run it back. So is this how you see sort of like the Burrow Raiders stuff that we talked about last week? You really don't want Hurts and somebody for the most part, unless you think something is going to happen on the other side. But how would you play it there?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to need somebody, but I got to tell you, I wouldn't be super pumped to put in CeeDee Lamb, even if he does play, just because now you have so much money tied up between Hurts, Devontae, and CD. You're really needing a 95% outcome from those 3. So I'd rather do it with somebody more affordable, like a Rico Dowdle or something like that could get there. Or if Lamb's out, maybe you look at Tolbert or Turpin or somebody like that.
Who do you think Rush is going to want to get it to? Because that's kind of the question. I think we've definitely seen him in the past. I'll have to go look it up after, but I mean, he could do something like that if you wanted to get to. We just got the price. Shout out to our guy Kenny. We appreciate it. 5,100. So it's close enough to what you were looking for. Not Best Buy pricing, so maybe that turns people off a little bit. He's not 49. He's not 45, something like that. So, but if you could put him with like a Tolbert and then have Devontae Smith on the other side, I'd be fine with that. You're not going to get the same ceiling as you get with Jalen Hurts, but you push the game a little bit differently, and then you're able to fill up. Because remember, we've walked through quite a bit already, and I don't see any value so far at these other positions. I mean, if the chat has others, they can throw them in, but we talked about how hard it is at wide receiver. That's going to lead to condensed ownership on certain plays, like a Hopkins at 5,300. He's just chalk for a reason. Throw him in there. We're not expecting 2 touchdowns, but he can crush it. He is attached to Mahomes, a piece of that game. I get that. I'm just saying it makes it so that you may have to get a little bit different in a way and build it up through your running back, build your points up through your running backs, your tight end, things like that, where you can actually pick up. You may need a mid-range tight end for the first time all season of like a 5K, because Ferguson, 5K, McBride, 5,700. Like, I don't know. Do you see any other to round it out? Any other tight ends that are below 5K that you have a ton of interest in as of right now? Because Otten's up to 55, Kittle 58. I guess Pitts 48. He's under 5, but also Taysom Hill. We might get some Taysom Hill love this week if he's cheap again. Have to check his price out as well. But any tight ends you see that are cheap that you have a ton of interest in?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the obvious punt tight end this week. Yeah, no, everyone that I would consider so far, I've seen over 5,000.
Or close to it, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Like, you know, if Kincaid, if you want to go there, I'm not advocating, but I'm saying anybody, even if you go Ingram, 53, Hawkinson is back now. So whatever his price is this week, not posted yet on here, but just to note, like, yeah, that's another thing to think of. So probably more of these balanced builds. So if you can find your way around that and stack up your potential for 25 plus points in other spots, because it's been tricky to get to 30 last week. Pretty easy. Like the winner of the Millie Maker blew it out by 20 points and came just 15 off the optimal for points. But I think in general, 25 plus is what you want to be jamming in there. So if you got a way you think that's going to happen, by all means. But anything else, DGen, that you want to talk about on this slate? 10 games, we ran through them there, but I think it was a pretty good breakdown, you know, for each one, and a good starting point for us. I got some notes here. I think I'm going to play fewer lineups this week and play in bigger contests. Which sounds like I'm changing my process, but I'm really not. I'm still going to play around the same amount. I just don't really think that I can build 30 unique lineups that I like this week based on this player pool. So I'm going to adjust the number of lineups I make. Ertz is not playing Philly this week. Ertz is playing the Steelers. So shout out to our boy, Philly Phantom, but Ertz is 3,800. That's correct, but he's going up against the Steelers. So maybe you meant that, but yeah, not a revenge game for Ertz there, if that's what you were thinking. And I loved your point today too, just to round out with a strategy tidbit, just, you know, process wise, we do a lot of the stuff the same way, because this chat came up and it's someone in our Discord at SHIPIT Nation who was a newer player said, when do you guys reserve your contests? And for you, me, a little bit more experience, others that in there, and we're happy to answer and help out, are more experienced, probably have a set process for when you get in on stuff or when you see it posted stuff, you know that you're going to play no matter what. But I think you do the best job of this in every sport that you play, and you just hit it on a little bit, is you're not going up and necessarily playing 10 grand this week because you won money. You're saying you can reallocate what you want to play in a different way because you see how a slate plays out. And you talk about this in golf all the time. People say, you've even put out a great little player pool guideline, but you've also said yourself, it is exactly what it is. It's a guideline because there is no set number. If you like a bunch of guys, probably an MME week, or if you like a certain wave and you want to play more guys within it and you're going to extrapolate your pool, probably an MME week. But if you don't love it and you're like, man, I just really love these 3 or 4 dudes or 8 dudes, I just need to mix them up as much as possible, throw in a few lower owned options around them to give me some leverage that way, and boom, Bob's your uncle, we can move on. So I think you do the best job of speaking to that, but that was what I was going to bring up. In football, you can, if you hate a slate, why are you playing the same amount of money you love or the exact same contest, not just to say you're playing it? Like, save it. What if next week you love next week's slate, or news hits and you feel like you have a huge edge or whatever it might be, and you've now blew your bankroll the week before or a piece of it on just playing to play. So always just think about that. Mindset is super important in this game, this crazy game that we all play and love. So anything else you want to add on that? I just think that's super important, and not enough people talk about it, and definitely not enough people do it personally.
I just love that we do this every Tuesday. It gets the juices flowing, gives me a whole week to, think about what I'm doing. Is it the best play? Add ideas, take ideas away. This first look show to me has actually made me a better player. So that would be my takeaway.
Yeah, always the goal, man. We want to make sure, this is what Kenny says. This is the the case. You just make another deposit. Duh. Yeah, that's the deposits have been more than usual. So that's the way she goes some seasons. But if you're following your own process, you know what you're doing, and you feel like you're right there. I mean, I've vented to you enough, Kenny. You're my boy, but it's like, it sucks, but it's part of the game. And if you keep putting yourself there, it's going to happen. And I always have to remind myself, every year is the same thing. I get a ton of seconds. I get a ton of thirds. I get a bunch of close calls. Everybody else wins. And I'm like, this is the way it goes. And then all of a sudden a big score hits. Maybe this year it'll be my biggest ever. I don't know, but certainly a lot of fun grinding it throughout the way and having fun with all the members, the community over at SHIPIT Nation. If you guys want to join the nation, somebody asked earlier, how long is this $85 on to? We left it up. Like we know a lot of people are getting back into the swing of things for NBA, NHL tonight. PGA still has 3 weeks. A lot of people are getting interested now in college football with the bigger prize pools and more information. And the EA Sports or whatever it was game came out this past year that everybody was excited for. So there's a ton of excitement around college football. We want people to be able to experience all of this. MMA has been a ton of fun. NASCAR, I know, is rounding out, but it comes back right after football. So as long as we leave it up with the banner that you see it up there, but I always recommend getting in, try it out. It's $85. It's like $2, $3 a day. You're going to be able to know what we're about once you get inside. There's education courses that you can take. There's just a ton of good stuff going on. You can see the vibe of the community is strong. So check it out if you guys want to check it out. Love doing these first looks with you, D-Gen. Thanks for another good week breaking it down. Thank you to everybody for watching. Do us a favor, smash that like on the way out. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Almost to 9,000 subscribers now. We'll have a big giveaway when we get there. But that's going to do it for this one. For D-Gen, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it!